All right, I want to think a little bit more about the kinds of work that we do. Thinking about when we work, what do we do? We saw in the last video that throughout much of history, human beings have worked in agriculture, worked in farming. We have worked the land and made what we need to survive on a daily basis. But with the onset of industrialization and the growth in factories and manufacturing and increasingly in technology and service work, the kinds of work we do has changed dramatically. And for most of us today, we don't make what we need on a daily basis. Rather, we are wage laborers. That means that most of us will go to a job that will pay us for that work. So we are not direct producers. Uh, why is this important? What problems come from this? Well, for one thing, the key difference here is that we're not working because we want to or need to. We're working because we need to get to a wage to get the stuff we need. Part of what that means is that the work itself becomes less meaningful because the work itself is not the goal. It becomes merely a means to an end. Now, one problem with this is that if we lose our job, we cannot make what we need to survive. We do not own the means of production, as Marx put it. So access to work is very important, but we'll talk about that a bit later. One of the key aspects of this that Marx saw was alienation from labor. Charlie Chaplin hilariously depicted this in his film Modern Times. Um, alienation from work happens for a number of reasons and happens in a number of ways, but essentially it means that because the work itself isn't meaningful, we become alienated from it. It becomes something separate from us. This is important if we think about the fact that work is core to who we are and our identity, our sense of pride, our sense of self. So if our work is alienated, this can create both personal and societal problems. We can be alienated from work in a couple of different ways that Marx points out. One, we can be alienated from the process, the work itself. So many people, for example, spend their all day at computers simply inputting numbers into data sets for major corporations. The work itself can be very boring, very dispiriting, very tiring. It can be very repetitive. Right? And we can also be alienated from what we make, from what we do. So this means that some people, for example, in the insurance industry, their whole job is to find holes in people's health insurance applications to get their claims denied. In other words, to deny people health care coverage, which can end up killing them. So again, that's the product or the service they're producing. All of this can create alienation from work. And this question of alienation helps us try to understand the question about what is a good job. This is a tricky question today because, well, we're seeing the highest unemployment levels we have in our society since really the Great Depression. But what is a good job? Right? Is it a job that's more important? But then what is essential to society? Right now, for example, CEOs are, many of them, or chief executive officers, heads of companies, are probably sitting at home doing meetings while delivery people, food service people, grocery store workers are out working, right? They're essential to make our society function, yet they're not treated the same way. Similarly, we know that teachers are very important. They oversee our children, they educate them, and yet they're not paid nearly as much as a CEO is. What about farmers? Farmers literally grow the food we need to survive every day. And yet farmers are experiencing a rash of suicides. They have the highest suicide rates of almost any employment in this country. And this is true actually globally, in part because it's so difficult to make it as a farmer, even though farmers are really important and farm work is very important. So what makes something a good job? What makes something an essential job to society? Clearly, the the function or importance of a job doesn't necessarily define if it's a good job or not. Ultimately, this probably comes down to some combination of pay. Does it pay as well? Prestige. Is it a job that people hold in high esteem? And creativity and control over our work. Good jobs are those that give us more control over what we do, allow us to be more creative. And often those types of jobs require more education, but they're also more prestigious and they pay better.